Update. I brought my affair partner home and told my husband, he wants you to share me with him, and you can't refuse. My husband quietly left the room, then I heard the toilet flush. When he returned, he held something that made my heart pound. What happened next sent chills down my spine and turned my life into a nightmare. Mark looked at me, silently pleading for guidance, but I had none to give. The reality of our shattered marriage and the consequences of my choices crashed down on me with brutal clarity. With a heavy heart, Mark and I gathered our things in silence, packing away the remnants of a life that had splintered beyond repair. John watched silently, his eyes betraying a mix of pain and resignation as we walked out of the house. The weight of John's calm anger and the devastation of our broken vows pressed down on me with each step. The night air was cool against my skin, a stark contrast to the heat of emotions that raged within me. Behind us, the door closed with a finality that echoed the end of our shared dreams. I glanced back one last time, catching a glimpse of John standing in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the dim light of the hallway. In that moment, I knew that John's calm resolve and quiet anger would haunt me for the rest of my days. The confrontation had ended, but the consequences of my actions had only just begun to unfold. That night, after the confrontation with John, Mark and I left his house in a state of somber disbelief. I stayed with Mark, but despite the physical distance, I couldn't shake the feeling that John wasn't finished with us. His calm demeanor had been unsettlingly composed, too accepting given the gravity of the situation. I knew him well enough to understand that beneath that calm exterior, he was brewing something. Days passed in a haze of uncertainty. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat properly, haunted by the echoes of John's quiet anger and the shattered pieces of our marriage. Mark tried to reassure me, suggesting we move on, but I couldn't shake the feeling that John had a plan, a strategy to turn the tables on us. Then, one evening, a text message arrived on my phone. It was from John, a simple and chilling message that sent a shiver down my spine. Come back home. We need to talk. Mark frowned when he saw the message over my shoulder. You can't seriously be considering this, he said, his voice laced with concern. I hesitated, torn between fear and curiosity. I need to know what he's planning, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark shook his head, his frustration evident. He's not going to forgive this easily, he warned. It could be a trap. But I couldn't ignore the gnawing uncertainty that plagued me. Against Mark's advice, I made a decision. I needed answers, closure, whatever form it might take. The drive back to our house was nerve-wracking. Every mile felt like a step closer to an unknown fate. When I arrived, the house was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of twilight. I let myself in, my heart pounding in my chest. John was waiting for me in the living room, sitting on the couch with a bottle of wine placed on the table in front of him. His gaze met mine as I entered, his expression unreadable. You came, he stated calmly, his voice devoid of the anger I had expected. I nodded, unable to speak. The air between us was thick with unspoken words, the weight of our fractured relationship hanging heavy in the room. John gestured to the couch opposite him, a silent invitation to sit. I hesitated for a moment before lowering myself onto the seat, acutely aware of the space between us. He poured 2 glasses of wine, handing one to me. I took it hesitantly, unsure of his intentions. We sat in silence for a long moment, each sip of wine a tentative gesture towards easing the tension. Finally, John spoke, his voice measured. I've had time to think, he began, his eyes fixed on mine. About what happened? About us, I swallowed hard, unsure of what to expect. John, he held up a hand, silencing me. Listen, he said softly. I'm not here to rehash the past. What's done is done, but we need to move forward. His words took me by surprise. I had anticipated anger, accusations, but instead, there was a calm resolve in his tone that unsettled me even more. I've made a decision, John continued, his gaze unwavering. I want a fresh start. I blinked, processing his words. A fresh start? I echoed, my voice barely a whisper. John nodded, his expression serious. Yes, but there are conditions. My heart raced, anticipation mingling with dread. Conditions? He leaned forward slightly, his eyes searching mine. You and Mark leave town, he said bluntly. Tonight. And you never come back. The demand hit me like a physical blow. John, no, he interrupted firmly. This is not negotiable. You brought him into our lives, into our home. Now you both leave, and we'll pretend this never happened. I struggled to find words to comprehend the magnitude of his ultimatum. What about us? I finally managed to ask, my voice trembling. John's gaze softened momentarily, a flicker of sadness crossing his features. There is no more us, he said quietly. Not after this. Tears welled up in my eyes, a mixture of regret and sorrow overwhelming me. John, please, he shook his head, his resolve firm. It's too late for please, he said gently. You made your choice. Now you have to live with the consequences. Silence enveloped us once more, the weight of his words settling over me like a heavy shroud. The wine sat untouched in my hand, the taste bitter against my tongue. Minutes passed in tense stillness before I finally nodded, a silent acceptance of the inevitable. I'll go, I whispered, my voice breaking. John nodded, his expression unreadable. Goodbye, he said quietly, his eyes never leaving mine. I stood slowly, the room spinning around me as I walked out of our house for the last time. I knew that John's calm resolve and his meticulously laid plan had won. The ache in my heart and the weight of my choices followed me into the night, leaving behind a trail of shattered dreams and unanswered questions. John poured 2 glasses of wine, handing one to me with a calm demeanor that belied the storm brewing beneath the surface. His voice, steady and collected, cut through the tension in the room like a knife. "I thought we should talk about what happened," he began, his gaze fixed on mine over the rim of his glass. I took a hesitant sip of the wine, its taste bitter on my tongue as unease settled in the pit of my stomach. "What do you want to talk about?" I asked quietly, unable to meet his gaze. John's smile was fleeting, devoid of warmth. "I just wanted to say goodbye properly," he replied, his voice measured, "and to let you know that I filed for divorce. You'll be hearing from my lawyer soon." The words hit me like a physical blow, sending a wave of panic coursing through me. "John, please," I pleaded, desperation creeping into my voice. "Let's talk about this. We can find a way to fix things." He shook his head slowly, his expression hardening. "It's too late for that," he said firmly, his eyes unwavering. "You made your choice, and now you have to live with it." Tears welled up in my eyes, a mix of fear, regret, and sorrow threatening to overwhelm me. The reality of what I had done, bringing another man into our marriage, shattering the trust we had built, crashed down on me with unbearable weight. "I didn't mean for this to happen," I whispered, my voice cracking with emotion. "I never wanted to hurt you." John's face softened momentarily, a flicker of pain crossing his features before he composed himself again. "Intentions don't change the outcome," he said quietly, his words echoing in the hollow space between us. Silence settled over us like a heavy shroud, broken only by the faint ticking of a clock somewhere in the room. The wine in my glass remained untouched, the gesture of peace it was intended to convey now a bitter reminder of the rift between us.